Welcome back to another Film Geek video. Today I'm talking about my top 10 horror films of 2023 plus 5 honorable mentions. Now, just like my previous video, this is 100% my personal opinion. This is not based off of any critic scores, Rotten Tomato, Metacritic, any of that jazz. This is just me going to see movies in theaters and some on streaming services and deciding, hey, I really enjoyed this movie, or going, ew, not so much. But I'm not doing the worst of. I was going to do a worst of list, but I thought that really isn't the vibe for my channel. I like building movies up, not beating them down. So I decided, you know what, I did reviews on all of the movies that I'm talking about, so more than likely, if there was a bad movie out there, I did a review on it, you can go back and watch my review. I don't need to beat those movies into the dirt. There's plenty of bad movies that came out, so you can just go check those out, or not. It's a bad movie. It doesn't matter. Okay, so the honorable mentions, these are in no particular order. So starting things off with It Lives Inside. It Lives Inside is a horror movie that's based off of Hindu demons, Hindu lore. It is really cool. It had a really great creature, an excellent idea. I like that it was based off of a different culture. I always really enjoy learning new and different things about different cultures of the world. So this movie really tied into a lot of that for me. Solid acting, great cast. This movie is a definite watch if you have not seen it yet. Next up in the honorable mentions, Cocaine Bear. I mean, come on, we're talking about a movie where a bear gets a hold of cocaine and goes on a killing spree. This is fun. This film was fun. Pure, unadulterated fun. Nothing more. I had a blast with this movie. If you haven't seen Cocaine Bear, you need to get out there and give it a try. Next up on the honorable mentions, Scream 6. I know, Scream 6, one of the big horror heavy hitters. Well, I liked it, don't get me wrong. I mean, I do have my Ghostface tattoo. I do like Scream 6. It's an honorable mention only because I feel like the movies that I'm about to talk about in the top 10 kind of brought a little bit different stuff to the genre, or they pushed the boundaries or things of that sort. In Scream 6, I really like where they're headed to keep the Scream story going on, but it's still a Scream movie. It was fun, it was great, but it really didn't, in my opinion, bring a lot of new stuff to the table, and that's the only reason it's not in the top 10. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. And I know all this drama is going on right now with Scream 7, and I don't know, we'll just see what happens there. I'm kind of hoping they just kind of scrap where they were going, maybe go in a completely new direction and try something different with Ghostface. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about Scream 7. Let's get on with those honorable mentions. Next up, we have Boogeyman. Boogeyman, based off of the Stephen King, I think it's just a short story. Is that right? I can't remember. But anyways, Boogeyman was a lot of fun. It was a good little, what I would call, introduction into horror. I believe this movie was PG-13. I don't recall it having a lot of gore, a lot of jump scares, a lot of atmosphere. This is a really fun movie if you want to do so. If you have some older kids, like I said, I think this is PG-13, and you want to scare the hell out of them around Halloween or whatnot, this is definitely a fun movie for a younger audience. My final honorable mention is A Creature Was Stirring. Now, I know this film is a little bit, I wouldn't say controversial, but it seems to be one of those movies that you either loved or hate. Here's the thing. I thought the film was doing an excellent job, and when you get closer to the end of the movie, things start to go kind of haywire. But I didn't think that it was enough to completely ruin the film for me, to be perfectly honest. I thought the concept was great. I thought that the message that it was trying to deliver, despite the fact it gets a little incoherent at the end of the film, was still really solid. The creature was really where this film was at. I loved the usage of the creature. I liked the fact that the creature was hidden for most of the film. You just kind of get glimpses here and there of it, and then when it finally shows up, I felt like it had a very solid reveal. It is kind of a dark movie. The movie does have a lighting issue, in my opinion. That's another problem with it. But all in all, I did think that this was a solid film, and it's definitely worth the time to check this movie out. I think it's still on VOD. I'm not 100% sure, but if it pops up on a streaming service or something like that, definitely check this movie out. Like I said, it's worth a watch, and you might be able to get past like the ending like I was and just be like, okay, it was just a newer filmmaker trying something different and it didn't quite work, but everything else was okay, yeah, you might enjoy this. If you just can't let it fly, I understand. I totally understand. But that again is why it's an honorable mention and not actually in the top 10 list. So you know what? It is time for us to move into number 10. Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, is my number 10 horror movie of the year. And I almost didn't include this on my horror list. I had to really sit down and think about it. Because when I first saw this movie, I really felt it was a bit more thriller and not so much horror movie. And as I've said in the past, the difference between a thriller and a horror movie is a thriller is trying to scare the people in the movie, the actors, the characters, the cast. Where a horror movie is trying to scare the cast, but it's also trying to scare you. In a lot of cases, you're privy to information that maybe the main characters don't have in a thriller and so on and so forth. But in a horror movie, everybody is completely surprised and kept, on their toes. And I sat down and I thought about it and I'm like, yeah, the cabin, Knock at the Cabin is definitely a horror movie. It does try to scare you. It tries to scare you with its message and what it's about. And it really is. When you sit down and start thinking about what the folks in this movie are supposed to do, the people show up at the cabin and they tell them, if they don't kill one of the family members, then the entire world is going to be destroyed. And so this family has to make this horrible decision that you hope no one would ever have to make. And then you're also wondering, is this really happening or not? So the film has a lot of levels to it, and unlike a lot of, M. Night Shyamalan films, there is no grand twist at the end of this movie. It plays it pretty freaking straight from beginning to end, which it was nice to see him kind of jump out of his what a twist comfort zone. Number 9 could possibly be considered one of the creepier movies I've seen this year, Cobweb. Cobweb tells the story of a family that has some kind of weird shit living in its wall. And that's all I'm gonna say. This film keeps you guessing till the very end. It doesn't hide the fact that there's something in the wall. In fact, throughout the entire movie, you are reminded something is definitely in there. Maybe it's imaginary, maybe something's literally living in the walls, you don't know. But the movie does a great job of building atmosphere and creepiness throughout the entire thing, and this is also a film with a very solid Halloween vibe, which makes it perfect for the fun holiday Halloween. Number 8 is a Shudder exclusive, and before I get into it all, if you're a fan of horror and you don't have a Shudder subscription, I highly recommend getting one. I honestly got one this year. People keep telling me I need to go get a Shudder subscription, because I'm like, I own a shitload of horror. I don't need a subscription to Shudder. But then I found out they have an ass ton of really good original films on there and series, and I'm like, all right, let's check this out. And you know what? I've been a big fan of Shudder. That's why I've decided to start reviewing movies from their streaming service. And this film right here is a good example, and that is number 8, The Sacrifice Game. The Sacrifice Game starts off like it's going to be an average home invasion film, and let's just say, guys, it doesn't stay like that. It gets fucking wild. I mean, it just goes crazy in this film, and I loved it. You never really know what's going to happen next in this movie, and that's something that I adore in a horror film, and why it finds itself at number 8. Number 7 is a good old-fashioned horror anthology film that came out around the Halloween season, Satanic Hispanics. I loved this movie. Now, I'm a little on the bias side. I'm a big fan of horror anthology, or anthology films in general, but mostly horror anthology films. I just eat them up like candy. But, believe me, this is a solid film. Plenty of good stories. I enjoyed every one of them. A good variety of different types of horror, a good variety of comedy, a good variety of tragedy. This movie has pretty much anything and everything to just get the old horror vibe going in you. If you're a fan of slashers, good news. If you're a fan of weird demon stories, good news. And if you like movies about transdimensional teleportation and different weird worlds, good news! This is the movie for you, and you should definitely check out Satanic Hispanics. Number 6 is also a little bit more on the comedy side, not so much on the horror side, but I had to add it to the list because I really loved this movie, The Blackening. The Blackening is a horror spoof that pretty much just pokes fun at all tropes in horror movies that center around African American characters. And let me tell you guys, if you've watched enough horror films, you know the tropes just as much as anybody else. So this film is just filled with tons of inside jokes, a lot of humor, a lot of just great characters. The only thing it doesn't really have is a really awesome horror vibe. I mean, I should take that back. It has a good horror vibe, not any scares. Was not a very scary horror comedy, but it really makes up for it in the fact that it just kind of really dissects the horror genre for African Americans while also adding a ton of humor to it at the same time. This is a solid film, guys. If you have not checked out The Blackening, that's something you should be doing very soon. Coming in at number 5 is a movie that has no comedy in it whatsoever, and is probably the film that left me filled with this weird, grimy ickiness at the end of it. Not that it's like filled with tons of gore or anything. It's just the subject matter, the way the film is handled, the overwhelming feeling of dread that follows throughout the entire film, the overwhelming atmosphere, and the insanely horrible moral judgment that these two main characters have to have. What movie am I talking about? Well, it's another Shudder exclusive called Rebirth. Rebirth is a different take on the Frankenstein story. In this story, a mother's daughter dies, and another doctor, the mortician at the hospital, has been tinkering with a way to bring people back from the dead. She kidnaps, I guess is the way to say it, the body of the child to run experiments on. The mother finds out about this, and you would expect the mom to be just like, "Oh my God, what are you doing to my daughter?" Except the mom's like, "So we're bringing her back to life." Okay, so you got a spare room? Because you know I'm not going nowhere. This film is spooky, scary, and just filled with overwhelming dread. You're watching two people make some of the worst, decisions that anybody could possibly make. And you're sitting there watching it going, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I mean, that's the kind of movie this is. It really stirs a lot of crazy thoughts in your head, and it really, really drives home its message quite well. This is an extremely well-made reinterpretation of the Frankenstein story, and it really deserves to be seen. So again, Shudder subscriber, check this movie out. Number 5. Best horror movie of my year. Number 4 is a horror film that I've noticed is pretty much on everyone's top 10 list, and that is Talk to Me. And that is because this movie is very well done. This film is very scary. It's got an excellent atmosphere. It has mind-blowingly amazing special effects, very awesome practical effects. The movie knows when to be really scary and when it needs to be a little bit more lighthearted because it just was really, really scary. The film is so well made, so well acted, and I can't believe it was made by YouTubers. That's right. So next time someone says being a YouTuber ain't a real job, will you just say, well, you watch Talk to Me and you tell me that. You tell me that again. Those YouTubers, they did a pretty good job. Not that I could. I couldn't make a movie to save my life, but I can sure talk about them. But yeah, anyways, number 4, Talk to Me. Great film, very scary, great cast. A lot of people in the cast you do care about. Very well developed, well-rounded characters. Solid film. Check out Talk to Me. I believe it was an A24 film. Number 4 on the list. Coming in at number 3 is Infinity Pool. Oh boy. Mia Goth acting crazy. That's it. That's all I need for a horror movie anymore. If you just start a trailer and it's like, in a world where we let Mia Goth go crazy, I'm right there with you. I am front row, popcorn in hand, soda with me. I'm watching that movie because holy shit, this is a fantastic film. I loved it. Now I know this is Cronenberg's son. I just lost his name, but yes, David Cronenberg's son directed this film, and let me tell you, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, man. If you love weird, just crazy, mind-bending horror, this is your film. It tells the story of super wealthy people who go to this made-up country, okay? Now, this made-up country has some pretty strict rules, and when you don't follow them, really bad things happen to you. But wait, when you're filthy rich, They can clone you, and all the horrible, terrible things that was going to happen to you now happen to your clone. And boy, oh, howdy. Those rich people don't care for clones too awful much. Let's just put it that way, or really anything. Boy, they were awful, awful human beings in that movie. But damn, was it a good movie. So, number 3, Infinity Pool. Okay, guys, here we are at my final 2 films. The 2 big dogs. Now, these were really, really hard for me to decide on. And I had to basically break it down to which movie really vibed with me the most. Which one vibed with me the most, okay? And so coming in at number 2, Evil Dead Rise. Evil Dead Rise is outstanding. I loved this movie. I liked this interpretation of the Evil Dead. It made me want to watch the remake. I had never seen the Evil Dead remake, or reimagining, or side story, or whatever that thing is now. I had never seen it. And after watching Evil Dead Rise, I was like, oh my god, if it's as good as this movie, bring it on. And it was. It was solid. I enjoyed it. It felt like a Sam Raimi movie, but it wasn't a Sam Raimi movie. It just kind of had his touch to it, and I liked it. The characters in Evil Dead Rise were outstanding. I liked every one of them. You felt so bad when something terrible happened to any of the main characters. Hell, you felt bad for the sub-characters. Even if they were just kind of there for cannon fodder, they were still slightly developed characters that you were like, ah, damn, not him. I was kind of hoping that guy would make it out at least. This film was no holds bar. It didn't matter who you were. Everybody was getting pecked off. It was insane. This film was just awesome. I mean, if this is what's to come with the Evil Dead series from here on out, please keep this up. Because my god, this movie was good. And like I said, I am a big fan of the Evil Dead series. And I'm not a big fan of remakes at all. But wow, they did it right this time. They made this movie a real Evil Dead movie. It had everything that you would want. Extreme gore, campiness, a little bit of lighthearted silliness, and amazingly good atmosphere with solid scares. And this movie delivers. It is great. So that brings me to my number 1. And I chose it as number 1 because I'm a sucker for the genre, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my number 1 horror movie of 2023. And yes, maybe I'm a little biased because I love slasher films. And maybe I'm a little biased because this was just an absolutely pitch perfect slasher movie. You actually have characters you cared about. Not that they were good people by any means, but they were at least fleshed out characters that you gave a shit about. Even if they were awful people and they deserved what they were getting, you kind of felt bad for them every single time. The opening sequence of this film alone lets you know exactly what you're in for. The whole scenario with the Black Friday and that whole thing going down in front of the wannabe Walmart in this film was so well made, so beautifully shot. It almost felt like you were there in the mix. While all of this horrendous chaos is going on, they still find the ability to throw in a little bit of joking, little comedy in there. And that's what made this movie great. It starts off, great opening, sucks you right in, and from that point on, Eli Roth had you. You were stuck. The film had such great atmosphere. It had such an amazing look. I loved the look of the slasher in this film. The mask, everything. The idea of him being some kind of pilgrim kind of character. I loved it. This movie was pure entertainment from beginning to end. And Eli Roth still remains one of my all-time favorite horror directors. He has made nothing but good movies in my mind. Even, whatever. I don't care what you have to say. Eli Roth is all right in my book. Well, guys, there you have it. The top 10 horror movies of 2023. Thank you again for checking out the Film Geek. As I said in my previous video, 2023 has been one hell of a ride for me. I went over my 1,000 subscribers. I never said I had a goal. I just kept it inside. But I did it. I got to my goal. I'm over 1,000 subscribers now. So thank you to all of you who have subscribed to the channel. I have so many cool things that are coming out in 2024. So stick with me. It's going to be an awesome ride. So if you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.